Ladies and gentlemen, we now begin the highlight of today's program, the third Wisdom of Future Talk series. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Jean-Michel Blanquer, to the stage. Professor is a renowned scholar of public law and former Minister of National Education, Youth and Sports of France. A graduate of Université Panthéon-Assas with a PhD in law and an aggregation in public law and political science, he brings decades of experience in education reform, governance, and law. He has held prominent academic roles at University of Tours, Sciences Po Lille, and University Panthéon-Assas, where he currently teaches constitutional law, political theory, and educational policy. As a former rector of the Académie de Guyane and Académie des Créteils, and Director General for School Education in the French Ministry of Education, Professor Blanquer has played a pivotal role in shaping national policy. He has also served as Director General of ESSEC Business School and is a prolific author of books on law, governance, and education. Most notably, he is the founder and president of Le Laboratoire de la République and a leading advocate for ecological transition and sustainability through Terra Academia. The theme of today's talk, What Educational Policies for a Changing World and Ecological Transformation, is the perfect topic for discussion. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Jean-Michel Blanquer to the stage.
Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear students, dear teachers, dear friends, it's a deep honor to be speaking with you today in the Kingdom of Bhutan, a country whose values of harmony, sustainability, and profound humanism resonate powerfully with that world needs most at this turning point in history. We are living through multiple revolutions today. The rise of artificial intelligence, the climate crisis, and the erosion of shared meaning all compel us to ask, what kind of education does humanity now require? That's why I'm so happy to speak before you, because you, the students, are going to be teachers, and you are going to shape this country. Before we speak of tools or technologies, let us remember this. We owe children two essential things: ensuring, which means roots, and perspectives. Ensuring in the deep soils of knowledge, culture, relationships, and nature. Perspective, to imagine the future, to become creators and guardians of the world they will inherit. Education is not only about transmission. Of course, it's first transmission, but it's also about transformation. That's why we must give to our children the ability to understand the world through fundamental knowledge and being free human beings thanks to that. And second, the ability to feel part of it through emotional intelligence, civic values, and ecological awareness. This dual goal, rootedness and horizon, must guide all educational reform. That's why I would like to outline the 7 levels of a successful educational reform. They apply to all humanity, but every country must tailor them to its context. For instance, Bhutan's creation of the Gross National Happiness Index is a major strength. You understood decades ahead of the world that a country must not rush blindly into modernity. True progress is long-term and must preserve our roots, our environment, and our ability to govern our individual and collective destinies. The ultimate aim of education is freedom, a freedom born from the autonomy that knowledge provides. But knowledge grows through effort discipline, and a willingness to be transformed. This is the fruitful paradox of education. You need constraints to be free. Education is like a house. It needs solid foundations, a coherent structure, and components that open into the world while protecting it from storms. Let us walk through the 7 levels of this house. The first level, this level is the first level because if you have not that, you have not the rest. The first level is simply school for all. I know that in Bhutan you managed to fulfill this goal, but it's not the case in all the world. It's very simple as a principle, and it's a simple sentence. All children must go to school. All children must go to school. It's a simple sentence, but too often overlooked in practice. That's why I have a graphic to show that. In France, in 1881, free and compulsory education at age 6 was a foundational act of the Republic. It was a key measure to give solid foundations to our system. In 2019, I extended that right to age 3 because we now know that a child's cognitive and emotional development begins long before formal schooling. That's why all of you that are going to be teachers for very young people, you will have a key role. Early education gives every child the building blocks of success: a rich vocabulary, logical reasoning, attention, and joyful sociability. Universal schooling also means full inclusion. Girls must have the same access as boys. Children with disabilities must be educated with the same ambition through specialized services or inclusive classrooms. This principle must remain non-negotiable, even during budget crisis. When cuts are needed, education is often targeted because it represents a large share of public spending. But as Abraham Lincoln said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Investing in education is the most productive choice a nation can make. A Nobel laureate in economics has shown that $1 invested in early childhood education yields $8 in future savings in social costs. We must also understand that there can be no ecological transformation without education for all. The school is where our interdependence with nature is taught. It's also where the skills for green jobs are cultivated. We see in these different graphics that there is right now a lot of children that are out of school in the world. 60 million do not go to primary school. 60 million do not go to lower secondary. And 130 million do not go in upper secondary. If you see the next graphic, you see that different regions of the world participate to these statistics. In Africa especially, it's nearly 100 million who do not go to school. In South Asia, it's 60 million. In conflict zone, 45 million. And in Latin America, 20 million. You can see that this is still a shame for the world. Of course, we see in the next graphic that there has been, you have had a lot of progresses during our 20th century history, because at the beginning of the 20th century, only 20% of the children went to school. And you had a lot of progress, especially until 1940, and then a continual progress until now. But what is not shown in the graphic, that there was a fall due to the COVID crisis. And I had also a graphic for Bhutan next. which show growing from 1970, the same kind of growth, close to 100%. If we see the next one, we see also that the sanitary crisis had a very huge impact on the level of the children. It was an international catastrophe for children. And this graphic shows you the level of the children at the age of 8 in terms of reading. It is the PEARLS international statistics. And you see on abscesses you have the number of days without school, and vertically you have the level reached by a country within 5 years. And you see a direct relation between the number of days of close and the fall of level during those years. It was a demonstration of the utility of school. Of course, we are all convinced about that, but it's now very clear that we need school. And the fact that there is now the new technology, the distance learning, and so on and so forth, does not play the same role as a concrete school. That's why you will have a job in the future, because we need teachers and we need human beings with human beings. This is very simple, but it's very, very important. In France, I thought to reopen schools quickly, and we limited closures to 12 weeks in total, but it was even too much. School for all, always, as early as possible. This is the first level of the house. There is a second level. This second level is ensuring the child through fundamental knowledge. It means that a child cannot grasp new knowledge without mastering the fundamentals. Reading, writing, mathematics, and logical reasoning are the clear basis for all the children in the world. Thanks to cognitive science, we now understand how these competencies develop, particularly in early childhood. You see that I'm insisting a lot about early childhood, the first years of the life. The 8 first years of the life are key moments for each child, because it is when the brain is most malleable. For example, the method of teaching reading matters enormously at this age. In France, as perhaps in Bhutan, some educators long favored what we call the global method. It was a method of word memorization instead of phonetic method. I put an end to this when I became minister in 2017, grounding our reforms in scientific evidence rather than passing trends. We created a National Scientific Council of Education, composed of experts across disciplines, to guide policies with rigor and continuity beyond political cycles. One of our major reforms was having class sizes in early primary schools, especially in underprivileged areas. This measure was based on international research, and today more than 400,000 children each year benefit from this policy. It means that you have classrooms of 12 students in poor areas when you have the age of 5, 6, or 7. It means in the fundamental years to enter in reading and writing. Education must evolve. Science helps us discover what works. For example, Canadian professor Steve Bissonnette has demonstrated the power of explicit teaching, a structured, step-by-step pedagogy that fosters clarity and confidence. This method is applied in sub-region of Morocco today, and it has a lot of good consequences. So pedagogy is not something which is always the same. It's something that knows evolutions, because we know more about the brain of the children and the way they learn. Ensuring also means cultural and historical connection. This is part of what we can call the ecology of the child. Here in Bhutan, your reverence for nature and heritage through gross national happiness exemplifies this. You've always seen schooling not just as access, but as transmission of culture, tradition, and identity. There will be no successful ecological transition without cultural diversity and local wisdom, including ancestral knowledge, such, for example, as plant medicine, so abundant in Bhutan. Children must not be reduced to digital profiles in a globalized system. They must be rooted beings, balanced and fulfilled. This is the spirit behind your visionary program named Education for Gross National Happiness. And I've seen that it seems to work. The third level, the third step, the third level of this educational house is that education opens new perspectives. Education is not just about filling a child's mind. Plutarch said, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. Children need critical thinking and independent reasoning. These are the tools to resist misinformation, standardization, and manipulation in a postmodern world. This requires training teachers to personalize learning, foster collaboration, and nurture creativity. In a technological age, memorization is not enough. We must cultivate broad cultural literacy and the capacity to work in teams. You will have to work more and more in teams because this is the real human skill that the machines don't have. This also means making the teaching profession more attractive through fair compensation, professional development, and social recognition. We made some reforms in France in that direction. A fulfilled teacher is one who feels central to society. They should be able to evolve across multiple roles and share practices with peers, thus modeling collaboration for their students. There is now a fourth level of the house, which is mastering new technologies. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant horizon. It is here, and it is growing. We must understand both its risks and its opportunities for education. At the systemic level, AI helps ministries and school systems. It allows to predict enrollment, it allocates resources efficiently, it automates administration, freeing time for pedagogy. In Estonia, AI tools are reshaping educational planning based on demographic trends. At the classroom level, AI enables personalized learning. Platforms like Squid AI in China or Century Tech in the UK adapt lessons to student progress, offering insights to teachers and targeted support to students. The big challenge of personalizing the curricula is now possible thanks to AI. For learners with disabilities, AI offers inclusive features like text-to-speech and tailored interfaces. And in lifelong learning, AI platforms like the very famous Duolingo allow flexible, adaptive education for all. But we must remain vigilant. Teachers are, as I said, are irreplaceable. AI must be governed ethically to support, not supplant, the human core of education. We must also confront the perils of screen addiction. It is the other graphic. the next one. This is the time spent by the children with screens all over the world. You have some example. The worst one is South Africa. The less bad is Japan. As you see, countries like India or France are in the middle, and the US is very close to the worst case. But whatever you see, even in Japan, it's nearly 4 hours a day dedicated to screens. This is an anthropological revolution, and not a good revolution, because this time is a time that is not used for reading, for physical activities, for the things that are good for children. The humanity is changing right now because of that. See the times you spend, or I spend every day on screens. Even us, we are addicted to screens. And we know that it is especially bad for young children. That's why I'm in favor of measures to prohibit the frequentation of screens by the very young children, especially between the birth and 11 years old. I think that a country like yours is able to take this kind of measure because you have this culture of having the sense of the roots and the sense of openness to the world. We don't want a world where everybody is on a screen and don't speak with the neighbors. Moreover, social media often undermines human dignity and attention. We must protect children by limiting screen time, not only in early childhood, but even after 11 years old. The real world must come first in their life, especially for those who will grow up in an ultra-digital society. Bhutan's philosophy, again, I think, offers guidance. There is now a fifth level, which is learning with and from the earth. And as you see, there is a kind of equilibrium between the challenges that we have with new technologies and the challenges that we have with ecology. Because the challenges of ecology lead us to see that it's very important to root the children with nature. And the children like that. Between a screen and an animal, a young child will choose an animal. But if we offer only screens, we are going to make a kind of distance with nature. Education must be ecological in both content and structure. Children must experience nature directly, especially in early education. In France, we have introduced school gardens, beehives, bird houses, connecting science and stewardship. In vocational schools, we have reformed curricula to include green skills in recycling, energy, sustainable agriculture. This is also the mission of Terra Academia, the international initiative I now lead. We are building green transformation campuses across France and soon globally to train professionals for the ecological transition. We need, for example, solar technicians, urban farmers, water experts, eco-architects, biodiversity monitors. We need those jobs, and that are the new jobs for the youth. We combine academic excellence with hands-on learning, building bridges between scientists, farmers, engineers, and educators. We also reject the false divide between intellectual and manual labor. Craftsmanship is intelligence, and intelligence is craftsmanship. At Terra Academia, hybrid models mix technical skill, AI tools, and ethical training. For example, our waste management master program in Bahrain, in partnership with Bahrain Polytechnic, will teach both technical and spiritual responsibility for the earth. Ecology is not an optional topic. It redefines what education truly is. The sixth level is building responsible educational communities. We must move beyond the image of the school as an isolated institution. Instead, let us create responsible educational communities, ecosystems where families, schools, and society share the mission of educating children. This requires something that I think you have, which are small, human-scale territories where teams feel real ownership. Autonomy must be meaningful. Local actors should be trusted and supported. Schools must also connect with the full life of the child, including after-school activities, social support, mental health, and family challenges. And above all, we must involve parents as co-educators, with open dialogue, shared responsibility, and participation in school life. This is how we create stronger communities and more resilient children. In the next graphic, you see something which is linked with the previous graphic, which is reading and physical activity time by age at a worldwide scale. You see that you read a little more when you grow, but it's very poor time, less than 1 hour a day, if you compare with what I said about the screens. Of course, you read when you see a screen, in general, but it's not the same kind of reading. And something which is very, very important. You said in your presentation, and I thank you for the presentation, that I was also the Minister of Sports when we prepared the Olympic Games. And one of the measures we shaped preparing the Olympic Games was a measure of 30 minutes a day of physical activity for all the children. At least, of course, it can be more. And because we want to face the challenge of the good health of our children. And within mental health and physical health, and both go together. And you see that the situation is not good. Physical activity is lower and lower during the age, and it's directly linked to the previous problem. That's why we have to be very united around the child. You know, there is this classical African sentence which says, we need a village to educate a child. I think that this is the key of success. We need the community of adults, the family, the school, but also the rest of the society, the rest of the village around the child. And that is the key of success. The training of the teachers, what you are doing, and the link between parents and school are the two key factors of the success of education. There is a seventh level. This seventh level, in reality, is the roof of the house and the roof of my allocution. This seventh level is to put knowledge institution at the heart of society. It means that education must be the avant-garde of the new civilization, preserving tradition, caring for nature, creating the professions of the future, guiding technology, and giving meaning to the human journey. This requires centers of knowledge and cultural vitality throughout the territory, like, for example, your networks of schools and monastics that have shaped Bhutan for centuries. Every country must create such places, spaces of learning and transmission, hubs for meeting, reflection, and innovation. And that's the kinds of thing I'm doing through the Terra Academia project. It means that in a territory, when you want to fix the youth, when you want to have vitality, you need to have institutions of knowledge. You need to have, for example, institutions of higher education, even in small cities, linked to the big cities. And you have to have research, you have to have curiosity in those institutions. A good society, a confident society, is a society where there is confidence in the educational institutions and presence of the educational institutions in all the territories. Otherwise, you have the metropolization of the world with only big institutions in big cities, and you don't have in all the territory the sharing of knowledge and vision for the future. That's why, to conclude, I think that the project you have for Gyalpo as a city of educational renaissance is very interesting and inspiring. Education lies at its core as a pillar of inner transformation, sustainability, and social cohesion. If I am well informed, Gyalpo will host innovative schools in ecology, green tech, and integrative health, centers of research that bridge traditional knowledge and modern science, an education grounded in nature, intergenerational learning, and civic responsibility. And I think that there will be bridges between Bhutan and this new place. I think it's very inspiring. It is a civilizational proposal. In a world of noise, we must teach children to listen again. In a world of speed, we must teach children to contemplate again. Bhutan can be a lighthouse for humanity. We should go toward a global alliance for the educational transition. The time has come for that, bringing together nations, institutions, and civil societies around three principles: respect for human dignity and the earth; second, training for ecological and social transformation; third, revival of critical thinking and cultural transmission. With technologies like AI, we can scale the best pedagogies while preserving the human bond. To educate is to plant seeds whose fruit we may never see, but we plant them nonetheless, with care, with courage, and with hope, because we have the sense of long-term approach. Let us build an education that roots the child, awakens the citizen, and inspires the human being. Let us act now, before the digital tide washes away what remains of our common world. And let us look to Bhutan, not only for its serenity, but also for its audacity, as we imagine the renaissance we owe to the next generation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I have the privilege of moderating this session. Thank you, Professor, for a fascinating talk, basically on education, and we see a lot of educationists, and also we have a lot of students here. I think very appropriate. Probably before we go to the moderation session, I thought if you could raise your hand if you think that you use your phone more than 4 hours a day. Honestly, you can just reveal if you're using more than 4 hours a day. How many of you think that you would use your phone, including social media, for more than 7 hours a day? Okay, thank you very much. I think that this definitely gives us an idea about where we are now, and using a phone is no more a luxury but a necessity, and it's, I think, just trying to balance how we use it and where we use it. And with this, as you see, Bhutan is trying to balance tradition, culture, and we are also trying to say that we are a country of gross national happiness. And then education is one of the important aspects that we have. From your experiences in the French education and in digital area, in terms of digital era, what is your basically a view of the trend that is particularly picking up by the younger generation of people? That I think we are older are much better in terms of using phones, because we actually don't know how to really use most of the things. But they tend to be much more that. So what is your opinion in the 21st century in terms of using this digital, particularly phones in terms of education?
Well, first, thank you for the question. And I think, of course, this question is one of the most important for the next century, because we all understand that there is, of course, good things and bad things to take in that revolution. But I'm sure about the first point, which is if we give to the children during the first years, let's say until 11 years old, roots, which means time to understand nature and culture and to have what they need in terms of reading and in terms of mathematics. If we give that, then they have more chance, much more chances to have good uses of technologies. It is not urgent to give them a use of technology. It's not urgent to give to a 3-year-old child or a 6-year-old child a computer or a smartphone. It's much more important to make him or her feeling as a human being. And feeling as a human being is being rooted in nature and culture. And that's why I'm so attracted by your country, because I think that in the 70s, your king was visionary when he created this idea, which was known worldwide. I remember, because I'm quite old, even if I was a child, but I remember the impact of this idea. And at this time, it seemed an utopia, something a bit original, a bit eventually with weak credibility. And now it can be a reference, because we understand that economic growth is not the only aspect. Of course, we need economic growth, but it's not the unique aspects of human life. So it's very important to take different criteria for education. It's very important first to make education at the center of the society. In a very technological society, we are going into a very technological society, whether we want it or not, it is the future. But in this kind of society, we need to compensate by more human approach. We have to compensate the standardization of the world by a capacity to put more human factors. And the first human factor is the teacher. It's the parents, of course, in the family, and it is the teacher. So that's why the first thing to say about the technological vision is that we have to give non-technological skills to the children, and they will be better to work with technological vision, because they will have, for example, the skill of understanding the other, the skill of seeing the qualities of the others and how you can complete your qualities and the qualities of the others when you have a work to do. In this technological world, the main skill of each human being compared to the machine is to be able to work together, is to be able to create teams, is to be able to build projects and to use the machines to make this project. So this ability is a social ability which needs skills and which needs a kind of spirit to do that. So that's the first thing. Second, and quickly, I think that of course we have to take all the opportunities of artificial intelligence. And I spoke about that very quickly, but it's clear that for the teachers in the future, thanks to AI, you can personalize the journey of each student. And that's, of course, a very big opportunity, because it is the ideal of education since the antiquities. So it's a real opportunity to be aware of each child, but it's not the machine which will be aware of each child. It's the teacher with the help of the machine. It's not the same thing.
Thank you, Professor. So before I continue with my questions, I thought I'll give the opportunity to the floor. In particular, the students at the back, I think, and also in the middle. So we would like to give the preference to the students to ask questions first, and then of course we'll have the faculty asking the questions. This is basically we are celebrating His Majesty the Fourth King's 70th birthday, and where we can all collaboratively participate to commemorate this important occasion. So what we would like to do is we would like you to raise your hand, tell your name and your school, and then maybe your question or a comment. We would prefer to have questions, very straight, short questions. So you don't have to turn around. Just be specific, and we both are academics, so we are more than happy to have any kind of question. So we'll allow the people to raise their hands. You can raise your hand. I think the first is always a difficult one. Please do not look at the backside, because then everybody will look at the
Or
wall.
the smartphone.
So you just raise your hand. Students, we have students from Paro College of Education, Royal Academy, and JSW School of Law. Anyone? Okay, I think while students are thinking, we can float it to the rest of the community members here. Question me, guys, students. Okay. Yeah, we have.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for excellent talk. My question will be rather based on assumption, and your talk basically focus more on school children in terms of education. But sometimes we overlook the education for older generation. With the technological advancement, which is very fast, it might happen that older generation may be excluded in terms of how they access AI and others. So in this kind of a situation, what should we do in terms of coming up with new education policies or some sort of innovations in terms of allowing older generation to at least sort of access those AI facilities and others in terms of contributing towards their lifelong learning? So this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that lifelong learning is a philosophy of life. And in reality, in all the history of humanity, and I think it's also something very clear in Buddhism, if I may say, you have a lifelong learning approach. Life is learning, and I hope for everyone that you are going to learn during all your life. It is one of the most important aspects of life, to learn, even if you are 90 years old. That's why lifelong learning is a key aspect of life. And it's true that in the modern times, which means today, but it's true for decades, that now there is a new dimension of lifelong learning, because it's linked to the aspects of economy in particular, and also there are new opportunities, as you said, thanks to the new technologies. So, of course, there is a kind of new age of lifelong learning now. And that's what I tried to say before when I said that we need educational institutions even in small and middle-sized cities. Because lifelong learning can progress thanks to distance learning, it's true. But it's never enough. Distance learning is never the solution alone. You don't learn the same things when you are with human beings and when you are in distance learning. So we have always to make a complete vision, to have a complete vision between distance learning and presential learning. That's why we have to shape a society where everybody is always learning, thanks to distance learning, but thanks to learning institutions that are quite close of the place where they live. And it means also that education must be at the core of the society. Education is not only something for the children and then we do something else. Education is not part of the budget and the rest of life is going its way. Education is the core question of life, and it's the core question of the society. And that's why a political project, a social project for a country has to be built
from my point of view, and that's why I advocate in my country, through education. Because it's the key answer for environmental challenges, for employment challenges, for good economic growth, and for happiness of the people, and for cohesion of the people. So lifelong learning is the key concept within this approach. And it's a change of mind, because most of the people still think that, well, you have the first part of the life where you learn, and then the other part of life when you work, and then the third part of life when you you do what you want. There is, of course, a new approach to have, which is that education is at the core of the project of the society. And this leads to something else, which is that in the postmodern society, there is a very big risk of cutting the link between generations. And in the modern societies, sometimes we have lost the link between the adults and the children, or between the very aged people and the children and the adults. And that's why these walls are having very bad consequences for the society, with very old people who feel unuseful, young people who do not have the heritage of the old people. So a good society is a society, and I think you are a good society in that sense, the Bhutan society. But it's never enough. We have always to work for this relationship between generations, which means long life learning, and giving a role even to the very aged people to make transmission to the youngest.
Thank you, Professor. And just for your information, so we are live streamed. So if you ask very good, great questions, your faculty who are outside the classroom may be even impressed. So we are live streamed both on social media of JSW as well as on this research center social media. So we'll have now the questions. I'll still open the floor. So I would like to give opportunity. Others you can write it down and read also if you are not comfortable in
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm a second-year law student from the JSW School of Law. My question to you is, I recently read about the Happy Schools initiative started by UNESCO, and it was brought to the French schools. So I would love to hear more about it from you. Thank you.
So the UNESCO has a very important role to create links between countries. And as you know, UNESCO is based in Paris. That's why there is quite strong dynamics of international relations between some French schools and some other schools in the world. So there is a tool which is to create UNESCO Club, where the children and the teachers work around topics that have something to do with education and culture, with the topics of UNESCO, and they can create a link with other clubs in the world. So if you are interested, I can give you some elements after the conference, but it's, of course, I encourage to do that, because it's always very interesting for the children, and it opens to international approach.
Okay, do we have other questions? Okay, we have. Okay, we'll go with one from here.
Thank you for offering the opportunity. I'm a student from the Royal Academy, and my question is, how do you envision the role of wisdom as distinct from technical knowledge in shaping young minds for the pressing challenges of the 21st century? Thank you.
Maybe if you could repeat the question, maybe a little slow down. And then, yeah.
So my question is, how do you envision the role of wisdom as distinct from the technical knowledge in shaping young minds for the pressing challenges of the 21st century?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not understand.
Okay, so her question is how the wisdom would, provide better in terms of education than the technology.
Okay.
So she's comparing wisdom and technology.
I'm sorry. Yes, I think that, of course, we don't have to oppose wisdom and technology. But we have to say that we are going in a very unhuman world if we don't have first wisdom before technology. And I think that we have to invent a good marriage between roots and technological perspectives. And I think that your country is a kind of laboratory for that. That's why you can have a central role as a laboratory for that. But I never oppose wisdom and technologies. I just say that we have to do not go too fast with the children in terms of technology approaches. And it's very important to give natural and cultural roots to the children first.
Okay, we have one more on the email. Sonam Mandy.
Hello, Professor, and thank you for the opportunity. So my question is, recently there was a news report about 9 children from a very remote countryside of Bhutan, so not being able to attend the school because the nearest school from their village is too far from the place they reside. So in light of your experience on educational policies and ecological transformation, how can the national education policies be restructured to ensure the children in remote places, like in the villages which are very far from the schools, can remote places, and the one residing in ecologically vulnerable places can receive an access to the quality education?
Yes, it's a very important question. In my professional life, I had to face this kind of challenge because, as your colleague said, in part of my time I was in the responsible of education is in French Guiana, where you have villages very far away from the rest of the territory. It's Amerindians and people of the forest with children with no schools. So it's and that's why I am so convinced that we always have to make all what we can to give schools to all the children without exception. That's why in this kind of case, of course, each case is a particular case, but it's very important to manage to create a kind of school where you have some children. Even if you have children of different ages, you have always methods to answer to this kind of challenge. This is the first answer. The second answer is to create boarding schools. It's also something I've done a lot in my professional life. I believe a lot in boarding schools because it gives to children a new framework to work. Sometimes when you have very big difficulties in the family in particular, when you have poor social background, it's a good thing to go in a boarding school. I think that in your monastery tradition, of course, you have also this kind of approach, but it's very important to develop these possibilities. And third, it's true that distance learning can be a solution, but again, it cannot be the solution. It's part of the solution. And with those 3 convictions, you can have an answer, but we cannot say that, well, it's not very important if few children don't go to school. It's a basic right to go to school. So even if it's costly sometimes to do that, we have to have a philosophy of 100% of children in school. That's my conviction.
Thank you, Professor. While we wait for the next question, probably I'll have one question. So I think one of the things that the law students, for example, the law graduates or lawyers face is how to regulate, the restriction of use of technology in schools. We have schools who ban a complete ban, put complete ban on use of technologies. We all, because of fear of like being misused, but at the same time, it is inevitable that at one point of time we will have to open these gates. But opening gate, would it then amount to floodgate of use of technology? And so, from your experience as a former minister and also as a educationist for a long time, and now looking at AI and all of those, what is your opinion in terms of restricting the use of technology among the school children, including probably the college students at the tertiary level?
Of course, we have to have a complete and complex vision of that. New technologies is not a whole and homogeneous whole. It's heterogeneous. So we have to distinguish the good and the bad aspects. For example, I insist on smartphones, and for example, as a minister, I have banned smartphone in the first secondary school between the age of 11 and the age of 15. It was banned, and it works. It had liberated hours of concentration on other things for children. So it's very important to be able to ban. But you have also to distinguish, for example, I insist on the bad aspect of screens, but screens doesn't summarize all the aspects of new technologies. For example, for very young children, it's just an example, but you can learn to make a kind of programmation without screen. The small cars where you say to a car, go ahead and then on the left and then on the right. You do that, it's a kind of programmation without screen. So it's good. There is no bad aspect of this kind of technology because it learns something to the child without making a kind of hypnotization of the child. Another example with screen is the fact that some applications on computers are very useful to enter in reading or for disabled children. So of course we have to use that, but it is the competence of the teacher, it's the professionality of a teacher to know what is good for the child and bad for the child. But what is very bad for the child is to give the screen and it's of course easy for an adult to do that. We never have to do that. We have to be even more with a human approach of the relationship between the child and the computer.
Okay, so we'll open again. Question. If you have questions, please raise your hands. Okay, we have one more. So please introduce yourself. Just name in the school.
Thank you very much, Doctor. My question is, what educational policies or practices can you suggest from your experience from France? Because I'm a very big fan of Mbappe. Just as a joke, don't take it seriously. To transform, in building transformed ecology and a bigger house of education, as you are already an educationist in Bhutan. So, thank you.
How to rise environmental education, that's it?
Yes.
In Bhutan.
I think, yeah. So learning from the French lesson, what do you probably recommend for Bhutan?
Okay. So first I want to say that there is, as I tried to say, there is Bhutanese lessons for France. And I am looking as precisely as I can to what you do and what you have managed to preserve until now and how it is good for your context of education. And believe me, when I will be back in France, I will use some examples of Bhutan for environmental approaches in France. But on the other hand, of course, you can have also examples coming from France. I will take some examples. First one is that we create delegates in each classroom of France from the age of 11 to the age of 18. It means that you have 250,000 young French delegates, one in each classroom, dedicated to environment. It means that this young person, has a watch about the day-to-day life in terms of environment. What to do with the waste, what to do with the energy that is used in the school, what to do with the biodiversity within the school and around the school. And in France, we have 60,000 schools and colleges. It means that in 60,000 places, there is this energy, there is this consciousness, there is this team of young people speaking, thinking, and being responsible of what occurs. Because one of the problems with the ecology, with the environmental question, is that we speak a lot and we don't act a lot. So it's important to speak, it's important to have consciousness, but the great question is how to go in concrete life. That's why it's very important to give the skills to the children and to make them responsible in the day-to-day life of what can be done. For example, you know that one of the very important problems of the humanity today is the fall of biodiversity. I believe that it is not a fatality. Climate change is a very difficult challenge, but biodiversity is also a difficult challenge, but we can, at the scale of a territory, make a kind of renew. And so we can be responsible of this renew. It's quite complex, but for example, artificial intelligence can help us to do so, to analyze the biodiversity around the territory, to select the kind of actions we can make, to gather the children and the adults around concrete actions. So we are in that, and what I did with the creation of Terra Academia is also to do that for the high school level, for the higher education level. But for schools and secondary education, I think a good thing is to have this kind of policies, which means to give responsibility to people, and when you give responsibility, to help them to fulfill their responsibility, especially having the skills to do so. And it's a way of learning. It's learning by doing. And I think that can be inspiring with different approaches.
Thank you. Do we have, I think we can now go in the front line also, the second line, because we said we'll only give it to students. We are also now open to everybody. So anyone with any questions?
My name is Tisum, and I am studying in the Royal Academy, at the Royal Academy. Professor mentioned that the ultimate aim of education is freedom. Since you mentioned about freedom, how and in what ways does education lead to freedom?
So it's a key question also because it's a philosophical question. For example, Immanuel Kant had written a lot about your question because there is this paradox I mentioned. There is different definitions of freedom. You can think that freedom is doing whatever you want. This is not my definition, and I think it's not a good definition. Freedom is to be autonomous. Freedom is to be able to understand the world and to act in my way to make a better world. And that's why education is so important, because it's education that gives you more autonomy. So the paradox is at the first stage, when you are a young child, it gives you less autonomy because you have to be in the classroom, you have to be concentrated, you have to respect rules. So it seems to be the contrary of freedom. But doing that is the way to have freedom. So I think that, of course, it's philosophical, but it's also shaping the way to freedom. When you understand that, you are well influenced to shape an educational system. When I made reforms, I had always this point in my mind. because this leads you to a long-term approach. You know, there is a short-term approach of freedom, I do what I want, and the long-term approach of freedom, which is I am shaping who I am, and I will shape that during all my life. And this is an individual, but also a collective approach. And it seems philosophical at the first sight, but at the second sight, it's also very practical, because all the things you do, all the reforms you make, all the things you do in the day-to-day life in your classroom as a teacher has to be guided by that, led by that. So that's I think, a key point especially for the future teachers.
Okay, so maybe we can take...
Or the future ministers.
Yeah, one more question. Okay, we'll give it to the girl so we can have, you know, the mix of...
Thank you so much. My name is Sange and I work at Gyalpo Institute. My question is, beyond standardized testing, how can schools measure the success of ecological education? For example, like community impact. I know that in our schools we don't have a domain, like a particular domain like to teach the ecological transformation, but it comes through all the domains. So besides the standardized testing, what are some of the measures that the school can assess? School can assess the ecological education. Thank you.
So there is different aspects of your question, I think. The first one is that ecological question, the progress of ecological questions in school pass through the question of presence of ecological learnings within the curricula. This thing you can evaluate it. First, you can evaluate the curricula. For example, in France, we changed some programs to give more knowledge to students in terms of ecological environmental. So this is the theoretical dimension, and you can evaluate two things. First, what is the content of the programs, and second, what are the skills of the children in that field. And now, for example, in the PISA worldwide statistics, you have this skill starts to be evaluated. But of course, it has to be evaluated at the scale of a country. And that's why, for example, in France, we make tests for all the children at some ages at the beginning of the year, of the scholar year, not at the end, but at the beginning, to understand what they have retained, what they have in mind after 4 years, 7 years, and so on and so forth. So you can make an evaluation of that, of the theoretical skills of the students about that. It's much more difficult to make an evaluation of the practical skills. Of course, you can do it in vocational education, and it's very important to make big reforms of vocational education, because, for example, people trained to be the future builders of houses have to have new skills, and you can evaluate that, for example. But it's more difficult to evaluate what I mentioned before to answer to a previous question, to evaluate the level of action of the students and the teachers around their school. But I think we could imagine ways of evaluation of that. We could, but it does not exist as far as I know.
So before we go to maybe next, I have one question. Thought we'll learn from experience from your side. In this age of technology, I think oftentimes the teachers do is to ban the use of technology. My question is, how do we in fact build the competency of teachers at all levels? Because I tend to see that students are, doing much better than teachers, particularly in terms of technology, and I think that gives that keeps the teachers at a disadvantage over use of things. In fact, some teachers are even scared to try some of the emerging AI tools and technologies, because we think that we will then be dependent on them, which means we are not, as a teacher, we are not competent enough to actually guide the students properly. So I thought maybe I'll just, from your experience in France, what kind of competencies do you provide to school teachers or university professors in terms of leveling up the competency in terms of use of these technologies, and then trying to actually help the students rather than saying don't use it and that's it?
Yes. Until now, there has been a kind of race between generations. It's what you say. And this race has been won by the young against the old. I mean that it's very frequent that to have what you said, which are children who know more about technology than the teachers. Of course, this can be questioned because, for example, sometimes in reality, children have a superficial approach of technologies. We say, they are born with technology, they are like technology-minded. It's half true. In reality, sometimes they do not know how it works. They do not know a lot of things, even about the smartphone they use all the day. So, but it's true that the younger generations are better than the older generation. But there is a new step with artificial intelligence. It's a kind of reset of this question. That's why it's very important for an institution like yours and for a country to teach to the teachers how to use artificial intelligence for pedagogy in particular. And that will be a strong skill of the teachers of the future. And I think it can be a new step with a new relationship between adults and young children. Because the good use of artificial intelligence is a use which mixes the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence. And to do that well, you have to have a big culture. You all know that when you interact with artificial intelligence, sometimes they say something, the IAs say something wrong, or not accurate. So if you have not a good culture, if you have not big experience, you can be wrong due to the use of artificial intelligence. So, and it was not the case with the previous technologies. So with this new technology, it's a new reset of our relationship with technology. First, it's a big revolution, even maybe more important or as important as the revolution of internet. And we are at the beginning of this revolution. All of you can be big master of that. It's a question of time. It's a question of dedicating time to understand what's going on with artificial intelligence. You can create tools. You can understand how you personalize the journey of your students. And so having this skill will be a key question in the future. And it's a question where there is a master and there is a student, and not a student who knows more than the master. That's why this is one of the proofs, I think, of the things I said before about roots, about the fact that you will be a master in artificial intelligence if you have roots in nature and culture.
Thank you, sir. Maybe we'll take one final question if we have. Yeah, so
Kuzampula and good afternoon. I'm Pemo Druk, currently pursuing BEd Primary Zonka in Paro College of Education. And now my question is, could you further suggest some strategy to promote Bhutan's education system with culture context? Thank you.
Suggest some strategies to address cultural issues in education.
Yes. Again, I think that this question leads to one of the strong points of your country. What has been done here is quite unique and can be a model for the world. I don't say that because I want to be pleasant for you. I think it's very inspiring to see how you managed during the last decades to be able to be yourself and to open to the world and to have an equilibrium between the two things. I think that you have big challenges for the future, but because it's not easy to follow this good way. But as you have done well until now, you are maybe the most inspired people to do well in the second part of the journey. So you have in your hands some of the answers to this question, which is that we have to master our future. We know we spoke about freedom. Freedom is to be the master of my future, is to do not all the things I want to do, but to have the destiny I want to have, and thanks to my knowledge. And so that means that I'm not the toy of the universal trends. I am the actor of my future, and we are the actors of our collective future, of our country, in this case Bhutan. It means that we have to shape the rules. We don't have to be passive with the rules. We have to shape the rules. For example, when we say it's good to ban the smartphone in primary school and secondary school, it's a way of shaping, of giving rules, of not being the toy of the new technology, but to be really active in what we want as a society. It's the same for a lot of things, but for education, it means that you have to shape your curricula, you have to respect your traditions, you have to be open to the world in a very specific way. So I think that you've done that well until now, and that the new possibilities, like I insist on artificial intelligence, because you have to take this tool to have not only to take a tool because it exists, but to take this tool to shape your future. And I think that you can be a model of that, and that you have to have collectively shared objectives about that, which is, for example, maintaining nature as it is, having strong collective lives even in the villages, all the things we have spoken about today. And you know, a boat can't go anywhere if he doesn't know where he wants to go. And so we have, for an educational system or for a country, to define where we want to be in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. And the educational factor is not the only factor, but it is the main factor to have this long-term approach. And the new technological tools must be at the service of that and not to contradict this approach. So this is very important, to be the masters of our destiny, and education is made for that.
Thank you, Professor. I think with this we'll come to the end of moderator session. And how many of you actually think that phones should be banned in schools? Raise your hands. How many of you think that it should be allowed? Raise your hands. So I think in a way it indicates that end of this session, it gives us the opportunity to balance, in terms of whether to allow or not. I think all of us are a little confused. So that's why we really don't see, heavy hands in terms of, in support of use of phones. And so today's discussion has highlighted the urgent need to balance technological, advancement with how we use and where we use it. And as we continue to shape Bhutan's future educational pathways, as we transform the education in the country, I think we have to blend innovation with cultural tradition, and at the same time, I think particularly for faculty and teachers like us, I think we need to be little bit gearing up ourselves more than what we know now, so that we are able to really help our students to understand why we are actually telling not to use. If you cannot convince them, then they would consider this as a rule of restriction. But if you can convince them, then they would consider it as a benefit, and I think that would help them to actually respect in terms of the decisions. And with this, I would like to thank Professor Blinker, and basically thank you very much for having this session, and I would like to hand this session over to the MC.